Good afternoon. Here we are for our week 9 discussion. This chapter in the Glickman book focuses in on the notions of group development, and this is a way that this is a little bit of this tail end of this book takes us in a little different direction than what we focused in on the front end, which was that a lot of that supervision kinds of notion around improving performance and those kinds of things. But there's this other kind of supervision around ideas of helping your faculty and staff grow and develop, and that's part of your role as well. So, this chapter looking at group development. So let's scroll through some of these slides here. I'll be getting, I will say before I get started here, I will be getting the observation 2 graded and back to you as soon as possible. I expect them, you may have them back before you actually start watching this, but expect them in the next week. All right. So I'd like you to start by just taking a little bit of time to think about an experience of working with a team at your school or within your district. So you might hit pause and think about that, or maybe something's already popped into your head. And so, we think about what kinds of groups we have within schools, and we have a lot of them, right? You are members of your faculty, this whole group. If your smaller departments or grade level teams, you may have a more one-on-one kind of group that are mentors and beginning teachers. You're as an administrator, you're part of the school leadership team. You might be part of the district leadership team. You see these others here as well that are all groups that we operate inside schools. So we're talking about group developments, but groups are made up of individuals and schools are made up of groups, so we're really talking about this notion of school development, right? So it starts with individuals and developing them, and we worked on that, and then hopefully we're eventually getting out to where we're building and developing schools. And within this, there's this Pearson environment framework in which context starts to fit. And Pearson looks at 3 different fits. There's the organizational fit, the group fit, and then the job fit. And we see some of the different kinds of notions out of the Pearson environment framework. And this last bullet point here, schools and teaching are complex. Teachers engage in the work at the organizational, group, and task level. As a teacher, you're engaged in all of those tasks, right? You are at the on the ground and all the way up through the entire organization. And so that's an important note for us to pay attention to. So here's some things about principles within this context, right? So an individual's personal beliefs and background experiences can shape the kinds of preferences they have in terms of the schools or the groups or the individuals they work with. They may have had only experience in large urban settings, so rural settings seems really strange to them, and they can't imagine working in that kind of school space, right? Or vice versa. School type also plays into that in that next bullet. And then there's this surprising kind of consistency towards certain characteristics, right? And so these characteristics and the job fit seem to go hand in hand within this Pearson environment framework. That doesn't mean that the group and organization aren't also important, but the job fit seems to fit tightly with some things here. All right, so within an effective group, there's a task dimension and there's the person dimension. So there's the job that needs to get done, and then the people looking to get the job done. So in the tasks, right, there's these task roles that the book describes and looks at to help orient in that space. And then there's the personal roles, and we see some of these may look familiar if you've done any work around cooperative learning, right? That encourager, the follower, the compromiser, those the gatekeeper, right? These are all kinds of roles we also see come out of cooperative learning. So it's a similar kind of framework that we see within that. But there's also dysfunctional roles that occur, right? We have these people that we may have in our group that don't fit any of the positive roles because they fall into this space, right? Um, a couple that I would note, right? So this kind of playboy playgirl, right? They're all there for fun, not really going to get any business. The aggressor, we know they hate everyone and everything. The dominator, this is the person that doesn't let anyone else have any ideas, and they're always right. This is the one that's really interesting. The help seeker, right? The help seeker is an interesting kind of notion about negative kinds of roles within the group. Almost helpless, right? So you need to be looking for how people fit into the group, not only in the positive side, but also in this dysfunctional side. The book also talks about Hersey and Blanchard's situational leadership, 4 different styles of situational leadership, right? High task, low relationship, all the way up to low, up to what I would these in the various combinations, right? High task, high relationship, high relationship, low task, low relationship, low task. So all those combinations, and some kind of defining words around there. And then there's this idea of the group being ready for certain pieces, right? And so we align readiness and leadership style against each other, right? And we move ourselves forward along the way here, right? And as the group becomes maturity increases and has higher readiness, we can, as the leadership style, really back ourselves off and really can let the group go and do a lot more in terms of stay out of their way. And this follows a very similar kind of pattern to the kinds of developmental ideas that we presented on the individual development side, right? From that being directive all the way to non-directive in that continuum. A similar kind of notion here in situational leadership. It's important to have plans. You're going to have dysfunctional group members, and it's important to have plans about how you're going to deal with them. Some of the things that I like, that I always like to do is, I think you have to make some observation and try to understand them. Are they being dysfunctional because we observe them, we can see their own insecurities or their own discomfort with things. This wouldn't necessarily be the aggressor kind of person, but it could be. You try to understand, right? I always say that people are inherent. I believe that people naturally act out of a position in which they believe they're acting in a rational way. So for some reason, that behavior seems to make sense to them. It seems to be the right thing to do. So some reason they're doing that. So you try to understand, obviously communicating with them. But one of the ones, number 4, is the one that I really like probably the most because it frees us up the most. We can establish rules and norms for our groups. On the front end, we can really diffuse a lot of dysfunctional member behavior. Because if we establish rules and norms at the beginning of the process, then everyone in the group is accountable to holding each other accountable. So this is a really important and viable piece to think about in your work. And I would say, obviously, you need to be ready to redirect unfavorable behavior. And those aren't always pleasant and can really put a damper on the meeting. But typically when you do that, they only put a damper on the meeting for the dysfunctional group member. All the functional group members are happy that you've done that and stepped in. So then there's a slide here. I think the next one may also be around resolving conflict, because again, anytime we're working with a group of people, there's going to be conflict, there's going to be disagreement, there's going to be other thoughts, right? So the way here is by a lot of asking, right? asking to state the conflict, restate the other's positions, make sure that this would run in line with kind of a Covey 7 habits kind of notion: seek first to understand and then to be understood, right? So I repeat what their position is so I can help make sure that they understand that I'm hearing them and I understand their position. Revalidate that there's still some conflict around here, and then I think this is where a lot of people we really need to spend a lot of time on is that third position, right? Is there some kind of win-win? So you're not comfortable at this level, what's the next level? One of the ways in which you see out of Rick DeFore's work with professional learning communities is he uses a process around consensus building, which ultimately is a conflict resolution that's called fist to five. And so the group comes to a position, they're ready to make a decision, and they want to move on. They'd ask for a fist to five, where a fist is no go. I absolutely abhor this idea, and I think it's the worst thing we could ever do. To five, this is the greatest thing ever, and I am so excited about moving forward. And the goal within the consensus is that everyone is at 3, 4, or 5. And so a 3 means I don't necessarily agree, but I'm willing to go along and I promise not to sabotage. That's what 3 means in the fist to 5 model. So if someone comes up with if everyone is at 3, 4, or 5, everyone agrees that we can move on, and everyone agrees that they will support the notion. But if someone's at a 2, then you would go through some of these questions. Help us understand why you're at a 2. What are we missing that you see as a concern around this? And then you try to come back around to this third alternative, and then can go fist to 5 again, and hopefully find everyone at a 3. And once everyone's at a 3, anyone that starts to backslide, you can hold them accountable to the fact that they in the group position themselves as a 3. So fist to 5, I've used that with faculties before. I think it's a great tool for consensus building, and it is pretty safe. So I've got just a couple minutes left, so I want to kind of gallop through, because one of the important things is to be prepared when you have group meetings, and one of the best questions to ask is if it's really necessary, right? What are the other options? I'll tell you one of the things that I did as an administrator that I really liked is I stole it, but I would have, for our monthly faculty meetings, I would have an information only section, and I would send out a memo of information only items the day before. So the faculty had the day to read the information only items. I would start every meeting with, you received yesterday's information only items, you have copies in front of you today. Any questions or concerns about these are just for your information. If you need some clarification, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, we'll move on to the important stuff of our meeting. And it really opened up a lot of time within our faculty meetings. It was a great tool. I totally stole it, and it was great. Again, establishing ground rules. Be courteous of time. Again, with large group faculty meetings, I started doing faculty meetings as my faculty got larger and had more and more conflicts. I started doing faculty meetings both in the morning and the afternoon. Staff had to attend one. So I did 2 meetings so that they could have one. And we did them in different locations in the building because our building was big as well, so it was easier for certain people to get to certain spaces. That was helpful in that process. And that leads us to the end, and I've got about 45 seconds left. So there's some thoughts and notions around group development, a couple of inside tips of things that I did within working with large groups or with small groups. And I look forward to our discussion. I'll get that up here very quickly as well. Thanks. Bye-bye.